Okay, so now let's look at control flow statements. So control flow statements are basically used to evaluate conditions in your code, and based on that take some actions, or to actually repeatedly run a part of the code. So if you have used some other programming languages before, you would recognize conditionals and loops as the typical control flow statements, and Dart offers all of them to you. So this is a very basic conditional, which is the if statement. An if statement typically evaluates a condition to be either true or false. So you'll say, if this variable value is expected to be an integer is greater than or equal to 2001, so it evaluates true or true. And if this is true, the first block of code is done, which is going to print 21st century. If it is false, it goes to the else if. So else if is the statement which will actually provide now a second condition to be checked, which is if the year is greater than or equal to 1901. If this is true, this condition, this print statement would be run, and it would print 20th century on the console. And lastly, you could have an else, just a plain else statement, which would run a code block if none of these conditions, the if and the else if, are true. Then you have a for loop. So a for loop is basically used to run a certain piece of code for a specific number of times. Generally, there are two ways in which you could specify a for loop. So this is a slightly enhanced version of a for loop, where you run the for loop for the number of times you find a particular object in a list of objects called flyby objects, right? So we had checked that flyby objects is a list of planet names. So for every planet name, which is denoted by object over here, it would run print object, the code print object, which is going to print the planet name in this, right? So typically over here you would give a list or a collection of items which are iterable. So you would iterate over this list, and for every item in the iterable or the collection or the list which is denoted by object, you can take an action on that particular item inside the code block. Then the typical for loop, which you would see at other places like even in C++, is where you actually initialize a counter. So over here the counter is month, you initialize it with the value 1, and then you repeat this for a known number of times. Like you would say that, okay, let's repeat it from 1 to 12, so month is equal to 1 and goes till 12, and then you increment the counter after each run of the code block. So it's say month plus plus, which is going to make the month go up by 1 every time the code is run. And then you would print month. So this would basically print month like 1, 2, 3, 4 till 12 on the console. Then there is the while loop. So while loop is used to actually run a particular code block till a specific condition is true. So you could give the year a value. So for example, the year has been given an initial value of 1977. So you could run the while loop while the year is less than 2016, and you would typically increment or update this value inside the code block so that you can recheck it every time the loop is run. This is basically going to print every year starting from if there was a print statement over here. There's no print statement right now, but the year would basically go from 1977 to 2016. So we can actually take this code and just copy it from here and paste it over here and see what this does, right? So we have pasted it over here, and let's just indent it a bit to make it more readable, right? And let's go ahead and run this code. All right, so we can see that for the year case, it's going to print 20th century, right? Because the year is 1977. So there we have it. Then for the objects in the flyby objects, it just prints each planet name. So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, just goes over each of the object and prints that. For the month case, it prints each month from 1 to 12. And for the year case, it doesn't print anything, but if we added a print statement over here, you would expect it to print all the years starting from 1978 actually, because we have added the print statement after the increment of the year. So to begin with, the year would be 1977. The first statement would increment it to 1978, and then the first print would happen. So you have it from 1978 all the way to 2016. When your year is 2015, it's still going to be less than 2016. So it's going to enter this code block. It's going to increment it by 1, which is 2016. And then it's going to print that year, and the next time it checks for this condition, your year is going to be 2016, which is equal to 2016 and not less than. So it's going to evaluate to a false, and it's not going to continue further. So that is all about the control flow statements, the conditionals and the loops.